Hello and welcome back to the Aquapod, where this week we're counting down to the Paralympics. On this week's show, I speak to Paul Wilson, Scottish Swimming's Performance Development Disability Manager, and we also catch up with the four Paralympians who will represent Scotland as part of ParalympicsGB this summer. Without further ado, let's get on with the show. Yep, so delighted to be joined by Paul Wilson, who's the Disability Performance Development Manager at Scottish Swimming, for a bit of a Paralympics preview, as the games are approaching pretty quickly now. Paul, how are you doing?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, and thanks for having me in for your wee chat.
No worries at all. Obviously, you're kind of in camp before heading to the games. How's that kind of going just now, and how are the guys kind of looking in the wider team as well?
Yeah, all good at the moment. So we just arrived in London the other day. So kind of this is really our first full day in camp. So we're based here till next Sunday before we jump on the Eurostar over to Paris. So not all good so far. We've had a couple of pool sessions, a bit of a float. People just kind of settling into the surroundings, getting their bearings around here, and I guess getting the final prep right before we head over to the big games.
I guess it's quite a familiar kind of surroundings, London. Obviously, that's where the trials were for the Paralympics. Does that kind of help, especially with it being a kind of para group as well, from just from a kind of practicality point of view, I guess?
Yeah, I think so. I think but it's one of those. We've not had a huge amount of events at London, so it still holds that kind of bit of prestige about being here. So yeah, it's somewhere the athletes know and have been here and are familiar with the surrounding areas as well as the facility, but it still holds that kind of little bit of awe, a little bit of raise
Yeah, yeah,
of standard. And I think when people arrived here, it was kind of a lot of us, staff included, were kind of like, actually, it's becoming a bit real now. This is us. The kind of the nerves start hitting a little bit, and you're like, yep, we're here and ready to go now. So no, it's good. It's great place to come. We've obviously got great access to the pool. We're only 5 minute walk across at the hotel's 5 minute walk across at the centre. So yeah, all good, all good. And I think people are kind of ramped up and getting ready to go now.
good stuff, good stuff. Well, Paul, you've got quite a broad role actually at Scottish Swimming, so cover both performance side and development side, with a kind of disability focus. I wonder if you can maybe just give a wee bit of background into that, into what your role is, and how that translates into more of a game time role as well. Obviously, in a different organisation, for the Paralympics, but can you maybe just give a little bit into insight into that for people?
Yeah, so I guess my job title is pretty broad. So it's disability performance development, and we've kind of made a conscious decision for it still to be disability as opposed to para. So my role covers everything from grassroots right through to our performance athletes, our Paralympic athletes, and we've purposely kept that because we want to try and make sure we're still delving down into the kind of the real grassroots of the sports, where we're kind of supporting and trying to get kids in the water in the first instance, and then support them through, whether it be a disability specific club, whether it be into learn to swim, into a mainstream club environment or a performance programs environment. So yeah, the role's quite broad. There's a
Mhm.
lot of parts to it, but we work or I work really closely with a lot of partners. So whether it's internally within the Scottish swimming team, or externally with Scottish Disability Sport, we work really closely with obviously British Para Swimming at the performance end, or aquatics GB at the performance end. Yeah, so it's quite broad, but I guess the main part is, listen, we don't have a huge amount of athletes in the water in Scotland, so we try and cater their needs to what we deliver. So whether that be kids coming in at the bottom end and running come and try sessions, confidence building sessions, getting swimmers in there and identifying where they are, what level they're at, and looking for local opportunities for them. As I say, whether that's with a learn to swim environment, through the framework, or whether it's into a disability club, specific club environment, or linked into a member club. So we really try and look at the needs of the participant, identify what level they're at, where they're at, and support them into an appropriate opportunity for them locally. And I guess once they're in the pathway and in the sport, then my role takes a different kind of approach. So that's supporting the clubs to be more inclusive, looking at classification opportunities, making sure competition opportunities are available, and the pathways into performance programmes. So whether that be within the Scottish Swimming National Squad programme structure or the Aquatics GB world class programmes. So yeah, it's broad spectrum. Work with a lot of people and try and encourage and look at opportunities and open up opportunities through that.
Yeah, and very hands-on as well, isn't it? I know from working with you over the past kind of couple of years, just yeah, the amount of people that will come up to you and speak to you about a total wide range of different things. It's actually pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things when I'm pretty hands-on and involved with swimmers from an early point, and I think, if I'm honest, I think it needs to be that way. When we support swimmers into club environments, and particularly when we start looking at classification, support swimmers through that process, we really need to know the individuals, where they're at in the pathway, when they're ready for that next step. And I always say that really the coaches that are working with swimmers on a regular basis, they get to know the swimmers, they get to know when they're ready for that progression, ready for that next step, whether that be moving through a club programme or moving up through a squad, or sometimes moving clubs from one club to another when they need that progression. I think it's the same thing in my role. It's need to be aware of the athletes, where they're at, what their kind of journey's been, and how do we best support them with a view on the long-term involvement in the sport. So quite often we'll have discussions about swimmers, and there'll be parents or swimmers or coaches want swimmers to move quite quickly. But I guess from my perspective, I'm able to take that, kind of sit back and look at the bigger picture and say, well, actually, for the development of this individual, I think this might be the right way to go, and this might be the way forward to do that. So yeah, it's I feel you've got to get to know the swimmers, get to know their stories, what their life looks like day to day, what their inclusion within the club structure might be, and then support them, support parents, support coaches and the clubs as best we can.
Yeah, I guess it's especially important when dealing with athletes with impairments as well, to know yeah, what they're comfortable with, how their life looks, and then you can kind of make a decision based on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, I think it's something that we want all coaches to do. You want to cater for the individual at every stage in the sport. I guess from a disability perspective or a para perspective, like I say, we don't have huge numbers, so we're able to do that with the numbers that we've got. We're just in that fortunate position where we can really try and cater things to the individual, and make sure that those opportunities are there as and when we think they're needed, and support the athletes through that.
Well, kind of, I guess looking ahead to the Paralympics, there's 4 Scottish swimmers on the team that you have been involved with for a number of years, kind of varying. So we've obviously got Stephen Clegg, Lawlor, Toni Shawn, and Faye Rogers. All are actually now pretty experienced. Faye's probably the least so, but still been at a World Championships. How good a group is that, and how excited are you to see them at the Games?
Yeah, I guess any swimmer that makes it onto a Paralympic team swimming at a pretty good level. You've got to be pretty good to get on the GB team, on the Paralympics GB team. Look, I think all of them have got a real opportunity ahead of them. They work hard. They listen to their coaches. They do what needs to be done on a day-to-day basis. All at probably not very different, but all at different stages of their career. As you say, I've worked with some of these guys for 10 plus years. I don't want to give too much away, but I mean Stephen's had a little bit of a break from the sport in his mid-teens, but worked with him prior to that. Louis again, linked in with him while he was still with Temple Disability Swimming Club based at Whitehill in Glasgow, and the transition from there into City of Glasgow when he was, I think, 14 or 15. Yeah, so the swimmers that I know really well, and been involved in their kind of journey through the last, for some 10 plus years. Yeah, and I guess it's always an exciting time coming to Paralympic level. This is what the guys are working on for normally a 4-year cycle. Obviously this time around it's been a 3-year cycle, but all the work that they do over throughout that cycle is ultimately with this end goal in sight of this is when we want to deliver the performances at the top end for them to do that on the world stage and see where that takes them.
Just before we hear from the guys, I've spoke to them over the kind of past month or so, what kind of is happening just now in terms of being in camp? So obviously the final preparations before the games, most of the hard work's done, isn't it? But what's the kind of focus and process at the minute to sort of ensure everyone has the best games that they possibly can?
Yeah, so a lot of this is just kind of the fine-tuning. As you say, there's very little actually change. There's no kind of technical developments or anything here. It's just fine-tuning of stuff that they've been working on for the last months and in some cases years. And just making sure they're in a good space and ready to go to travel over to Paris and to race fast. So that varies for each athlete. Basically, it's a 10-day meet, so there's swimmers that will be in early doors. So I think Toni's one of our first swimmers up. The 400 free is pretty early in the programme for her. Mm-hmm. Whereas you've got Faye and Stephen both got kind of one of the main events on the last day. So there's quite a long period to prep through. And it varies at this stage. It varies depending on the individual, what their needs are at this moment. So, but yeah, pretty much fine-tuning, just making sure the athletes are prepared and supported and got everything in place. And so my role in the team is looking at kind of performance support. So it's looking at whether that's race starts. We've got a couple of swimmers on the team that are S11 swimmers, so visual impairments, got very little, if no vision at all. Have to swim in blackout goggles, so one of my roles is tapper with them. So a bit of work at the moment just on the fine-tuning the tapping skills to make sure it's got a performance focus and we kind of nail those turns and finishes. So yeah, it's individual to the guys. Obviously they're all working with their lead coaches here and identifying what needs to be focused on, what needs to be the direction of travel at this moment, and just make sure everybody's in a good place and looking forward to getting out to France.
Over the past few weeks, I caught up with Toni Shaw, Faye Rogers, Stephen Clegg and Lawlor as they began to get excited about the upcoming Paralympics.
I'm so excited. Like, it's kind of crazy that it's so soon. Like, it doesn't quite feel like real yet, but we are literally going to like a holding camp in like a month now. So yeah, I'm so excited. I'm so proud to be part of the team. Like, we're going on a camp to Turkey for a few weeks, and just to be with everyone on that team, like, it's such a great experience. And like working together with everyone is so nice.
And obviously last time Tokyo was a bit of a funny game, just didn't have that full experience. What are you kind of looking most forward to about this experience that will be so different?
I think just like being able to have like my family and friends there, like watching in person and like there being a crowd and being able to like explore the village properly will be so fun.
And Faye, obviously being your first games, what's your thoughts? How excited are you?
Yeah, I'm so excited, and again it hasn't sunk in yet like at all, but I don't really know what to expect. It's going to be like really new, but I'm excited about that. Like, I'm hoping that I can like take it all in my stride and like use it as excitement, but yeah, I feel like this season's kind of all coming together at the moment. Like, everything's kind of clicking, and that's a really nice feeling. It's been like not the easiest season, but like we're definitely getting there now. And yeah, I'm so excited to be part of like the team. Like, I feel like the team environment is like just great, and still being really like new to Paris swimming and like being on the team and stuff.
Yeah, I'm going into Paris with not too much time expectation. I think that was a mistake I made going into Tokyo. I had a big time in my mind, and after the performances I did at the trials in 2021, breaking the world record, I became so focused on a target rather than execution. So these last 3 years have definitely been huge focus on process rather than time, and the times have come with that, which is really great, and it's actually made swimming a lot more enjoyable because it's a lot more of a thought-provoking sport rather than just batting yourself up and down. But obviously the target's always there in terms of time, and for me, I want to go to Paris to be as close to perfect as I can be, and that would be as many world records as you can get. But like I say, the focus these last 3 years has been about execution and processes, and I think myself and Matt Troyan believe that if I execute properly, those records will fall. And I'm knocking on the doors of the back in the fly. So hopefully, if everything lines up properly in 2 months' time, then we can get those records.
Well, it was actually my coach, my old coach Danielle, that told me. She actually phoned me and said, check your email, and went, you've made the team. So she actually told me. So she technically found out for me, and I found out. And then
amazing.
I found the confirmation email. I was like, wow.
And well, I guess Danielle's been such a big part of your journey as well, hasn't she? She's been a great coach to you, and also probably a friend as well. Did it make it even more special that it was her that told you that news?
It was probably next level special when she told me that, because she was actually at a competition and I was back at home. So because she was up for the Scottish national age groups and I was at home right after the trials, so I was having a wee bit of a short break. And it was just in the morning I got that phone call. Didn't know when it was going to happen and when the announcement was going to be. Yeah.
So great to hear from our 4 swimmers that are going to be heading out to Paris very shortly. Really excited to see how they can get on. Paul, I guess just that there might be people that are listening that haven't seen too much para swimming before. They've maybe seen bits and pieces, but how would you kind of, what would be your sort of advice or suggestions to them in terms of enjoying the games and getting the most out of it and sort of understanding how it all works?
Yeah, so I guess that at this top end of the sport, we obviously within the para swimming program, the athletes compete within a classification structure. So within the Paralympic program, we have 14 classifications. So S1 to S10s for those swimmers with a physical impairment. The S1s being the swimmers with the higher support needs, and S10 being the more minimal impairments. We have S11 to S13, which is for swimmers with a visual impairment, and S14 is for swimmers with an intellectual impairment. I guess it's relatively easy to understand the sport at this top end because at the Paralympics and World Championships, Europeans, everybody swims within their classification. So if I give you an example, so Lawlor, we spoke about before, Louis is an S14 athlete. He'll race against other S14 athletes. So it's a straightforward, whoever hits the wall first is the winner. Relatively easy to follow. We do have a point system that's used in some other competitions, but at this top end in the world, it's a first past the post. So the racing's head to head. It's exciting. You kind of know it's easy to follow, and you're rooting on your athletes to finish first.
Yep, and I guess like you say as well, we've got 4 swimmers on the team, and even though it is quite a small number within the wider kind of British group, they are all in different categories, aren't they? So it'll be good to kind of for listeners to watch that and see how those impairments kind of come to the fore within those races, and it is interesting to see, particularly in the kind of lower physical impairment categories, isn't it? How you do get kind of different impairments or how they look visually, different.
Yeah, that's it. The classification structure is there to try and it tries to minimise the impact of the impairment. So basically, you should be swimming against other people with a similar swimming ability. Now that how their impairment actually impacts them can be massively different. So you may have somebody with a lower limb amputation racing against somebody with cerebral palsy, for example. But the classification system has been developed over a long period of time with a lot of experts in the field looking at how does that impairment affect what you're able to do in the water. And essentially that's what it distills down to. It's how does your impairment affect your ability to do either the stroke mechanics or the needs of the event that you're swimming in, and it allows us to then, I guess it's one of those things, we have those S1 to S10 classifications for swimmers with a physical impairment, and you can have somebody with cerebral palsy in S10, somebody with cerebral palsy in S1. It depends on how that impairment affects their ability in the water. So it's a really complicated process, but ultimately what we try and get people to focus on is at this level. We have Toni Shaw as an S9 swimmer, so she'll swim against S9 swimmers. There'll be different impairment types within that, but the bottom line is they've gone through the classification structure, they've come out, they're an S9 swimmer, so they then race head to head.
Nice one. And you might not want to go into specifics in terms of athletes, but is there any events that you're looking forward to in particular with a kind of Scottish focus? I know all four of our guys have got opportunities to medal, some in more events than others, but certainly opportunities for silverware, isn't there?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. To make the team, you've pretty much got to be there or thereabouts to getting on the podium. All four of our athletes have got a chance of getting involved in the medals, and I guess at this point it's we just want to make sure we can support them and get them onto the blocks in the best possible place for them, and support them to deliver hopefully the lifetime best in a final when they're there. I guess from the events that they've got, Stephen's pretty strong in the 100 fly, still current world record holder, also very strong 100 back as well. So they're two events that kind of looking forward to. Toni's focus has really been around the 400 free this time around, so that's the one that she'll be focused on, but she's got a couple of other swims in there as well. She's got 200 IM and 100 freestyle as well. Faye is current world champion. Her focus will be on the 100 fly, I think, but she's pretty strong over the 400 free, 200 IM as well. She's got 100 free in there as well. So she's a real good racer. Like, as soon as she's in, she's on that block and go. Her focus is on about, I want to beat everybody next week. So she's of all four particularly strong in that race mentality. Louis got 100 backstroke, which is his main event. It's his only individual event. But there's a chance of him maybe getting a place on the 4x100 freestyle relay as well, mixed freestyle relay. But there's a couple of good guys ahead of him as well. So Will Ellard's in there, Rhys Darby as well. So we'll see if he gets himself a slot in that team. There's a chance, but who knows? That'll be down to the coaches and the head coach and the team lead to pick out who's on that team. But certainly he's a strong contender for being in that 100 free.
Awesome. So lots to look forward to then, kind of over the coming weeks.
Absolutely.
And it's 10 days of competition as well, I believe, isn't it? So something that pretty much every day to look forward to.
Yeah, we've not necessarily got a Scottish athlete in the water every day, but we've got racing throughout the whole programme. So the swimming, fortunately or unfortunately, covers the whole Paralympic programme. So we pretty much start on day one after the opening ceremony starts, and then we finish the day of closing the ceremony. So the guys are involved all the way through, but it's maybe not a bad thing. Keep the focus on what they need to do in the pool, and it gives us, certainly from my perspective, a bit of interest right the way through the Paralympic programme.
Yeah, it's the way we want it, isn't it? We want the swimming going on, so
absolutely,
it's good. Just before we kind of wrap up, Paul, obviously you mentioned earlier about wanting to get as many people involved in para swimming or the disability side of swimming. If there's maybe someone listening, or a parent, or if there's people that watch the Paralympics and are feeling inspired, what is the kind of process to get into the sport and to look at the kind of para pathway?
Yeah, but it really depends on the individual and what level they're at. So we try to promote an inclusive approach to the sport. So whether that's at Learn to Swim or through into our performance programs, we want to try and open up as many opportunities as we can. So for young kids coming in at the bottom end, where they may not have been in the water before, not going through the Learn to Swim program, we just encourage people to contact the local authority, local Learn to Swim framework providers, and look for that opportunity to get in the water. We try and promote that inclusive approach, but it's got to be what's right for the individual. So if there is a little bit more contact needed, Learn to Swim can be delivered one-to-one, can be delivered in smaller groups or supported in smaller groups, but likewise it can be delivered within a fully inclusive environment as part of a Learn to Swim program. I guess if it's kids who are in the water already and swimming, it's looking out for what's the opportunity in your local area. So we've got there's a network of disability specific clubs that are based across Scotland, some with fantastic history of producing athletes to the very highest levels, but also delivering kind of day-to-day swimming opportunities or week-to-week swimming opportunities, whether that be just recreational opportunity, whether it be learn to swim with that environment. They do a great job at offering opportunities to swimmers. So, as I said before, we work really closely with Scottish Disability Sport. So they've got a network of regional managers that work with their branch structure. They identify where athletes are, whether it be in swimming or any other sport, and kind of look to support the individual parents and the clubs to look at that next opportunity. And then we have our network of member clubs as well, which we promote that inclusive opportunity, that inclusive approach, and just encourage people to let the coaches be aware if there is an impairment there. It's not so that the swimmers get treated any differently. It's just so that the coaches can adapt how they deliver and what they deliver to best suit the needs of the individual. And the more information the coaches are aware of and understand, the better the opportunity they can offer to the kids. So it's just about raising awareness about the needs of the individual, and giving the coaches and the clubs the best opportunity to support them in that environment. And we kind of link in with whether it be our mainstream clubs, whether it be the disability specific clubs or Scottish Disability Sport and their branches. We'll look at how we support the athletes through that. So whether it's support for the athletes, the clubs, or the coaches, then we'll just pick up as we see the needs there.
So lots of opportunities out there anyway, for those that are looking for them.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks very much, Paul. I appreciate your time, especially in a busy period for you, obviously in camp before heading out. But hopefully the Games goes well from a Scottish and wider British point of view as well, and you enjoy your experience as part of the group.
Thanks for that. Thanks for having me on the podcast, and hopefully we'll have a good kind of next 3 weeks into and leading through the Games.
And that brings to an end this week's episode of the Aquapod. We wish all the athletes heading over to Paris all the best of luck, and we look forward to watching your successes.